All right, hello and welcome back to Real Seekers. I'm your host, Dale, the Real Seeker, and today we I don't have a special treat for you. I'm bringing a show related to the Shroud of Turin and my Shroud Wars that I don't want to have to do, and I think it's disgusting that I have to do this quick solo show to defend my honor and Shroud research because of the betrayal of someone who I thought was a friend, the Shroud skeptic Hugh Farey. This doesn't bring me joy, but I think it's important. So, just so people who don't know what's going on, I recently taught a 4-week Bible study course at Oakwood Wesleyan Church, and they were kind enough to give me 4 weeks to teach a Bible study on the evidence for the Shroud of Turin. And we're in the works of doing a part two. So I've got another 4-week plan, assuming that's how, I don't know if they're how much they're giving me, but I'm assuming it's another 4-week plan. So I'm going to present 4 weeks of new material that I didn't get to present to them the first time around in the first 4 weeks. As you guys know, on the Shroud, there's just so much material out there. That said, the fourth and final week was I wanted to be fair to the people at Oakwood who had never heard of the Shroud. They were totally new to it. And so I didn't want to just present the positive evidence. I was given strict orders from the pastor there, Pastor Reverend Sully. And he said, make it simple. This is an introduction for them. It's new and that sort of thing. So keep it as simple and as straightforward as possible. And because of that, I didn't get into all the nuances. I tried to present 3 weeks of the straightforward positive case on the arguments that I did, but I felt it was important that they be aware that there is evidence on the Shroud skeptic side, or there are arguments on the Shroud skeptic side. And so I chose to reserve the last week to just introducing them to three of the main Shroud skeptical arguments: the carbon-14 dating, Walter Macron's pro-paint findings. And, for them, they were very interested in various biblical and or even more historical inaccuracies between the Shroud Man and, how the historical Jesus would have been in the first century. And so that's what I chose to look at and highlight those things. Now, unfortunately, the Shroud skeptic Hugh Farey on his blog, and I will include his blog for people on the Oakwood Wesleyan blog that I did. So for my Bible series. So unlike, I don't hide behind controversy. I'm transparent and upfront with it. So, I know Reverend Sully's mom is now a #1 fan. She watches all my Shroud related content, which is great. So for you and anyone else at Oakwood, I will post up Hugh's blog in full, so you guys can go and read the full thing. But yeah, so it'll be on my Oakwood Wesleyan blog. So realseekerministries.wordpress.com. And if you scroll down a few, you'll see the blog that says Oakwood Wesleyan Church Bible Studies plus Third Degree or Truth Hurts podcasts. And just, scroll down to the bottom. I will have Hugh's blog at the bottom for this show on Hugh's hypocrisy, Hugh's hypocritical hip piece, as I've called it. But, so the reason for this show is that Hugh Farey has taken strong issue with the fourth lecture that I gave. I don't know why he doesn't have a problem with the first three, because using Hugh's hypocritical standards, he should be critiquing me for the first three as well. But I left stuff out of there as well. But anyways, so he took issue with the fourth one and has accused me of being dishonest, a liar, deceitful, and even a fake Christian, or to use his terms, as someone who behaves in an unchristian-like manner. And this is not the first time Hugh has viciously attacked an innocent good guy like me, doing his best to present the evidence on the Shroud. He's been stalking me, rather satanically, I would have to say, on multiple shows that I've done, presenting the case for the Shroud on a popular level to different podcasts and different audiences. And he's taken it upon himself to write at least 4 or 5 blogs now, I think, if I'm not mistaken, at least four. I think I'm pretty sure of that. Implying that I'm stupid, that I'm ignorant, I'm lying, I'm manipulating data, and all this stuff. And for the most part, because Hugh has been a friend, I've just kind of let it go. Some people are coming to me, Shroud experts are coming saying like, "Oh, you have to respond, you have to hit back because Hugh is making up BS about you as a credible, honest scholar, and he's making stuff up about you and making the pro-Shroud side look bad." And for the most part, I said, no, Shroud, yes, he's being a bit bombastic and stuff like that, but I think he means well. I think he's writing it in good faith, and he's using a bit of, bad language and stuff like this. So I was actually defending Hugh as a friend because I thought he meant it in good faith. Sometimes we as friends, we poke fun at each other and stuff. And that's why I've made some funny little clips of Hugh and stuff like that. And I just figured, okay, well, he's going a little bit over the top, but in the last blog, it really looks like he's attacking my credibility. And from what I've talked to him in private, this isn't just something in good faith. He is being satanic and attacking me. And that needs to stop. I do not tolerate someone calling me dishonest or a liar when I'm not, because my integrity is very important to me, especially when I'm teaching Christian apologetics or teaching audiences about the Shroud. I go above and beyond trying to be as honest as I possibly can on that front in terms of the teaching. But let's just take a little glimpse at Hugh's blog here. So I'll just give you guys a glimpse of it. So on medievalshroud.com, it's the first blog, Absence of Evidence, Make It Up. And I'm just going to read the intro here. So he has a whole bunch of complaints and stuff like that. Obviously, way too much. I don't have the time to respond to each and every single one of them. But I'm going to respond to 3 that Hugh, in a private correspondence, brought up as the most important to him. And so I'm going to respond to those. But just in the intro, so here's what Hugh says. Another nail in the authenticist coffin. The 4th and last lecture in a series of Zoom presentations hosted by the Oakwood Wesleyan Church in Toronto and delivered by Dale Glover is called Refuting the Skeptics. The first 3 were an introduction to the Turin Shroud, how the images were made, and the Shroud and the historical Jesus. But as a skeptic myself, I was particularly interested in the last one. If there is evidence that refutes the non-authenticist argument, I'd like to know what it is. But there isn't. Rather, to my surprise, most of Glover's evidence is invented. Oh, I just made it up. And then here's the last bit. Let's look at the lecture. As it starts, Glover chooses 3 significant skeptical arguments to refute: the carbon dating, Walter McCrone's pro-paint findings, and the historical and biblical inaccuracies. And each of these is divided into subheadings and bullet points. Here's Hugh. Every single one is either completely untrue or a distortion of the truth. Every single point that I raised is, according to Hugh Farey, a lie. That's dishonest. That is a lie on Hugh Farey's part, and he should be ashamed of himself and apologize right away to me. Because as we're going to see, he actually affirms throughout the blog many of the points that I raised. So obviously, it's not true that every single point or bullet point that I raised is a lie or a distortion of the truth. Shame on you, Hugh. Shame. Okay, but anyways, look, as I said, Hugh has been a friend in the past. I do feel like he's betrayed me, and that's why I waited a couple days to cool down, and I'm trying not to respond in anger or overly aggressive. I'm trying to turn the other cheek, as Jesus would do, and trying my best to be charitable to Hugh and in the hopes of a reconciliation. So that's why I'm going to respond to this, not in anger. I'm going to respond to some of Hugh's claims, the 3 ones he mentioned, because before I did this video publicly, I reached out to Hugh privately. I think if you have a problem with someone who's a friend, and if Hugh had a real problem with something I was saying or stuff I was doing, he should have reached out to me privately first and just respectfully said, "Hey, Dale, I've got an issue. Can we talk about it?" Now, I might not have agreed with him, right? In fact, when we did correspond privately, as we're going to find out, I did end up disagreeing with two of his 3 points and half agreeing with his third one. And again, I'm not going to reveal anything from the private emails. I'm going to stick to what's in his public blog, just out of respect for privacy. But I am going to focus on the three issues that he raised in the email that he wanted my response onto. But the first thing I do have to mention is that, again, just in general, Hugh has all throughout his blog, he says, I'm lying about this. I'm just making stuff up, inventing it whole cloth. That's not true. Everything I state comes from credible pro-Shroud experts and peer-reviewed sources, and or pro-Shroud expert books and papers written by the experts. I invent literally nothing. Every claim I make is coming from someone. So by Hugh calling me a liar, he's actually calling all the experts that I'm quoting or using liars, dishonest, and all of that, including our mutual friend Barry Schwartz, who recently just died. Hugh is disgracing Barry Schwartz's memory. At one point, I quote word for word Barry Schwartz at one point, and Hugh says that I was lying when I said that. Well, if I'm quoting Barry, that means Hugh is calling Barry a liar, and that's disgusting. I won't tolerate that. Apologize for that, Hugh. Okay? He's our friend, and Hugh was on our show crediting Barry, saying how honest and scrupulous Barry was for scientific accuracy. But yet he's calling him a liar in this blog. I won't tolerate that. Okay? So getting back to the main point about myself, so Hugh will say things in his blog. It's a lie. He even ends his blog by saying this, dishonest. An honest debate is one in which each side presents its evidence, explains what it means to them, and hopes the audience will be swayed to their point of view. Sounds exactly like what I did. A dishonest debate presents evidence which isn't true or tries to win by emotional blackmail rather than reason. Sounds exactly like what Hugh is doing with his blogs. Maybe one day I'll write a post called The Honest Authenticist, but I may have to invent him first. So I'm not, according to Hugh Farey, an honest authenticist. What is the opposite of an honest authenticist? A dishonest authenticist. Hugh has called me dishonest, and that kind of slander is positively satanic and will not be tolerated by any true Bible-believing Christian. Take it back, Hugh. Now, what's worse is that Hugh is actually lying in this blog. Every time he says that I'm lying, which entails a purposeful, deliberate falsification of the data, or calls me dishonest, a dishonest authenticist, Hugh is a liar. Because now I promise to keep his emails private and everything like that. This is the only quote from the emails I'm going to provide. And the only reason I'm doing it is because I don't think Hugh would mind me saying this, because when Teddy, another Pro-Shroud expert, in the comments called him out, Hugh also says this exact same thing, right? So I don't think Hugh would mind me sharing this bit at the very least. So this, I hope, is not a breach of privacy. If it is, I apologize. That's not my intention. I want to keep what we say in our emails private. But this part, Hugh has said this publicly many times, so I think he's cool with this. But he says, quote unquote, when I raised this issue to him, calling me a liar, a fake Christian, and dishonest, he says, this is not an accusation of dishonesty, and I do not call you a liar. I really insist, and have done so before, which is true, he has, and will do so again in the future, that I do not call people either liars or dishonest just because what they say isn't true. And I do not call you, Dale, a liar or dishonest. I do not call Heller, Adler, Rogers, Barry Schwartz, Teddy, or you liars and dishonest. I certainly do not feel I am warranted in calling you, Dale, dishonest or a deliberate liar and or a fake Christian. And so I would never do such a thing and never have done such a thing. Here's the problem then, Hugh. So again, not going into the private emails, but I took Hugh at his word when he said this, and I said, okay, fine. If that's the case, then you have to understand that when you say I'm not an honest authenticist or I'm lying, that implies to the reasonable person reading your blog that I am a liar, that I am a fake Christian, that I am being dishonest with people. And I can't have that. How can people trust what I'm presenting if that's truly what I am? So since you don't mean to convey that in your blog, then you respect me as a friend. I didn't ask. He was at first saying like, I may modify the blog and all this stuff, and I'm like, no, look, full transparency. Keep the blog as is. If you want to change it, that's up to you. The only thing I require as a friend is that you write a disclaimer at the top of your blog. Since you affirm you don't intend to call me a liar and dishonest, just put a note at the thing that, look, despite how appearances, it's not my intention. I do not think Dale is a liar. I do not think he's dishonest. And I don't think he's a fake Christian. That's all you need to say. That was the only request I made. Other than that, he could keep it up as is. Look, despite my objecting to a lot of Hugh's manipulations and deliberate misrepresentations of myself, nonetheless, there is some good information in there. There are some truths in there. There are some criticisms Hugh makes of me that may be correct. I mean, that's why I always support both sides of my channel. Shroud Wars, I always, to the best of my ability, bring on both sides. I'm the only one doing that so far as I know. There are other great Shroud channels and stuff like that, but it's always from one perspective, either pure skeptic side or pure pro-side. So far as I know, I'm the only one bringing the experts together, and that's really important for me, having that discussion. And that's I always post up Hugh's blogs in response, along with Pro-Shroud sources from the experts. I love when people do their own research, go beyond the shows, take that as an introduction to understand what are the arguments in context, pro and con, and then they go and do their own research by looking at the papers I post in the blogs on both sides of the issue. That's not what a dishonest authenticist does, right? I don't hide the data. I'm more transparent than probably everyone on that front. My blog is filled with sources from both sides, as many sources as I can possibly get, to the best of my ability. So clearly, I'm someone who's a good faith debater, wanting to share knowledge with people, giving them the best opportunity to come to the truth. Again, before we get into the specifics, part of the reason why I'm very offended by Hugh doing this is because the very claims that he, through his blog, implies, at least without that disclaimer up there, through the very things he implies I am, many pro-shroud experts. I mean, Hugh has been scolded and chastised by experts for misrepresenting, for lying. They call him a deliberate liar. They do call him a fake Christian. And I've come to Hugh's defense, even in some cases against people that I also consider close friends. And I've defended him and say, no, I think he means well. I do see his bias affecting him. And he does show, what he accuses me of is actually there are hundreds of examples I could point out if I wanted to, if it wasn't private. A lot of it's in the SSG, but people constantly point out, hey, you're misrepresenting us, Hugh. You're misrepresenting the facts on this front. And over again, when you look into the details of Hugh's criticisms, they fall short of the mark. They're not that, it may look like it's a good point when it's just out there unresponded to. But then when somebody actually has time to look into it, we see the manipulation. He's engaged in a selection bias. He's using this little semantic point, or he's using a footnote or something like that to refute the main argument somebody's making in a book or something. There are so many accusations. He's been threatened with being kicked out of the prestigious and exclusive Shroud Science Group because of his behavior on this front. And throughout all of this, I'm the one who has come to his defense saying, no, Hugh's my friend. You're my friends as well. But I honestly believe that Hugh means well. I think his bias is clearly, in terms of the selection of data, yeah, that's a little white lie on his part. He is manipulating and hiding things or presenting it in a way that's not truly fully honest, I guess I would say. I do recognize that. But I think that's just more a result of subconscious bias. I would love to return the favor and say I think Hugh's malicious and nefarious and he's a deliberate liar, stuff like that. But I would be lying. I don't think that Hugh does that. And there are tons of examples on my show where Hugh will concede a point and be honest and upfront and say, well, the skeptics don't lose on this front. I think the pro-shroud side has a good point here, or something like that. And I don't think you can just dismiss that. But then the same is true on my end. I've also done that many times that Hugh has witnessed. And so I deserve, out of charity, the benefit of the doubt, especially if you're going to call yourself a friend, right? If Joe Nickel wrote this about me, I wouldn't care at all because he doesn't know me. As long as he is truthful, as long as he honestly believes I'm a liar, there are liars out there, right? Where sometimes it's the right thing to call someone out as a liar if they truly are lying, right? But the difference between someone like Joe Nickel, he doesn't have a clue about, he doesn't know me or anything, right? I might be offended if he's just saying it to score a rhetorical point or something. But if you really believe I'm a liar, then okay, fine. Thank you for calling me out, but I'm not a liar, or I would know if I'm lying or not. But when someone who knows better, like Hugh Farey, who knows me and ought to know that I'm not dishonest in any way in the presentation of data, I take great offense to that, and I think it needs to be responded to. So I think that's it in terms of the general point. The last thing I'll say on the general point before I get to, so I'm going to have Teddy post this in the comments, a link to this video in the comments for this despicable blog that Hugh Farey has written. I continue to maintain my request. Hugh, if you do not intend to call me a liar, dishonest, and or unchristian, I take your point. You didn't call me a fake Christian, although it looks that way. When you say someone is unchristian, I think that could imply it's a fake Christian. But nonetheless, just put up a disclaimer saying, look, despite appearances, nothing in this blog is intended. I personally say that you personally, knowing me, don't intend to say I'm a liar, dishonest, or making stuff up, or inventing stuff out of whole cloth, and or am a fake Christian. That's all I ask. But with that, keep your blog up as is. Let people do their own research and research the claims from qualified experts on both sides first before they make up their mind. But that includes reading your blog. And I will support the blog by posting it on my own blog for people in case they can't find it on your channel, on your blog page itself. That's all I ask. Barring that, I will also ask you never again to repeat this mistake. Okay? Never again on your blog can you ever, with me, or with me, I'll just keep it as like that, and let other people handle it. Never again imply that I'm dishonest or lying and or a fake Christian unless you include a disclaimer saying that that's not your intention. Now, if you write a blog and that is your intention, what I would say, if you ever believe I truly am lying and stuff, because there are people that lie. So let's say you think I am lying, then first deal with me privately and that sort of thing. And, show respect as a friend before you go to saying that in the blogs or something like that. But yeah, if we can't work it out privately and you seriously believe I'm a liar and you're meaning it in good faith, not just to score rhetorical points, then I won't be happy. It'll affect our friendship, but I will support you having the right to say what you think's true. Just like I support others. When I call Walter Macron a liar, the guy was a liar. It was disgusting what that guy did. Okay. So that's my request, Hugh. That's how we can maintain our friendship. That's how I can, in good faith, continue to host you on my Real Seekers podcast. That's how I can continue to defending you as a member of SSG instead of just caving in to what the leaders of the group want to kick you out because of your perceived dishonesty. They refer to you as a wolf in sheep's clothing and that sort of thing. So That's my request for how this can be fixed, kind of thing, right? Just promise going forward, if you write a blog like this, that's fine. But if you don't intend to say that I am actually lying or dishonest or a fake Christian in any way, just write a disclaimer at the top of the blog that despite appearances, I absolutely do not believe Dale is this. If you do believe that I am such things, then do me the honor of trying to confront me in private first. And if you don't like my answers, only then will you write a blog, and we'll have to take it from there, I guess. But so that's my request. So let's look into what are the three specific claims that Hugh gave me in the email, but looking at it based on what he said in the blogs only. So I'm not revealing anything private. Okay, so the first is that Hugh says I am a dishonest because I told the Oakwood Wesleyan Church that Walter McCrone published in his own journal, The Microscope, which is not proper peer review. But Stirp, by contrast, published the results in quote unquote, dozens upon dozens of secular scientific peer-reviewed journals. What does Hugh say to this? Well, he says, well, this is totally untrue, as Glover knows very well. So somehow Hugh knows what I don't know, I guess. He knows I know something when I actually know the opposite. But, and here's what his critique is. It's because I use the phrase dozens upon dozens. And he says, well, how much is dozens upon dozens? So let's just look, with that said, let's look at what I said in the show. For full context, here's what I said about Walter McCrone's and the peer-reviewed journals. Contrast, you'll remember Stirp published all of their results and scientific findings and conclusions in dozens upon dozens of secular scientific peer-reviewed journals, the top journals in the world. Well, what about McCrone? Well, he published in a scientific peer-reviewed journal himself, but it was The Microscope. And this doesn't count as proper peer review. Why? Because he was the editor of The Microscope. Of course he got away with publishing his own papers. That's cheating. That isn't. So there's the quote, right? And Hugh's issue is, Hugh doesn't just, I do get the point right that, yeah, McCrone published in his own journal. That doesn't count as peer review. Only a fool would believe that that is proper peer review. If you're the editor, you control what papers get published in your own journal. You just say, oh, well, it just so happens that my paper makes the cut. That's complete rubbish. That's not peer review by definition. That's you just going, duh, I want my paper in the journal, so I'm going to publish it. Stirp they had no relations with the journals that they got their results published in. And they did have, quote unquote, dozens upon dozens. Now, Hugh's issue, well, what does that mean? I was lying when I used the word dozens upon dozens. Why? Well, because, look, not to mention that I provide the link to all of Stirp's published papers, but here they are. The original was about 26. I got a Stirp file of 26 files. And I think at the time, when I was doing my Shroud research back in 2018, there was 26. Since then, there's been more papers published on this site, right? But what I had in mind when I was presenting to Oakwood Wesleyan was the first 26 journals written by Stirp and Stirp scientists in secular peer-reviewed science journals like Applied Optics or Materials Evaluation, X-ray Spectrometry, Journal of Biological Photography. And by dozens of dozens, Hugh tries to say, well, what precisely number is that? Look it up online. Dozens of dozens can mean various things, right? It just means, in general, it's a lot, right? At least more than 12. At least there's dozens upon dozens, right? There's more than 24 journals that I had in mind, but all I was intending to say was just look, there's a lot, and they're all right here for you. And look at was I lying to Oakwood? No, you can clearly see all of the dozens and dozens of journals. There are a lot. There's 26 of them. And that's what I had in mind as to what I was talking about when I used the word dozens and dozens. Is there something better? Maybe I should have said, in 26 peer-reviewed journals or whatever. But again, it doesn't matter. The point is I'm saying there's a lot of journals. That was my intention. And it's clear I wasn't lying to the people at Oakwood, because I showed them in the very first lecture this very page with the links that they could go to themselves and take a look at what I have even in this presentation. I provide the web link for them to go and see these journals for themselves. There's no deception here. There's no dishonesty here. And quite frankly, you're ridiculous and deluded, Hugh, if you think that it is. I'm sorry. This is just something that me and Hugh fundamentally disagree on. Again, no details about what happened in private, but we still disagree. I explained to him my intentions on this front and what I meant. Again, it was just something I said off the cuff, right? It's not like I was thinking, oh, yeah, I'm going to trick them by saying there's 26 journals and I'm going to say dozens upon dozens so they think there's 36. Oh my gosh, come on, Hugh. Are you that ridiculous that that's what you think I was doing? Come on now. Jeez. Anyways, so that's Hugh's first thing. That's why I'm so dishonest. I'm such a liar, because I just happened to in the heat of the moment when I was talking, I just happened to say the word dozens upon dozens, which isn't a lie. Dozens upon dozens, if you look it up, one of the meanings is it just means a lot. And there's more than 24, so there is at least a dozen upon a dozen. It's just ridiculous. This is just nitpicking to the point of foolishness, in my opinion. And by foolishness, I mean the biblical definition. It lacks discernment. That's you looking for a problem. And this is why a lot of people on the pro-shroud side have an issue with you, Hugh. That's why they think you're so manipulative, right? You're like CNN. It's so easy to dig up dirt when you're nitpicking every little thing that I say or Trump says or a pro-shroud person says. These kind of tactics are just disgusting. So don't engage in them. I don't support that when people do that to you. So don't do it to me, and don't do it to anyone. Be better than that. Okay, so that's literally the first thing that he says in the email, the first of his 3 specifics that he wanted me to address. What's the next one? Oh, before we move on, though, there is one other thing. This wasn't in the email, but this is just something that bothered me from his blog, because Hugh Farey says, so in one of these things, I characterized Walter Macron as a bigoted atheist who hated superstitious Christians. Here was what Hugh Farey had to say in response to that. This is simply a lie. Lie implies I'm deliberately deceiving people. Hugh goes on, this is simply a lie. He wasn't a bigoted atheist who hated superstitious Christians. There's no evidence that he was. Dale Glover claims that this is his assessment from reading Walter Macron's book, but I don't believe him. So I made that up too. I've never read his book. Well, I'm not on screen. I have his 2002 book, Judgment Day for the Shroud of Turin by Walter Macron. I'm not showing it, by Prometheus Books, from 59 John Glenn Drive, Amherst, New York, with a number 14228-2197. My memory's not that good. I couldn't just memorize that from the internet, and I promise you I'm not looking it up. This is coming directly from the book that I'm holding in my hand, that I read cover to cover. How dare you imply that I didn't read the book and didn't get this assessment from the book? You disagree with my assessment? That's fine, Hugh, but you don't dare say that I didn't read that book when I did. Do you understand? And I have quoted it in 2018, footnotes after footnotes in my own 300-page chapter on the Shroud of Turin, where I quote and list the page numbers. Now let's do that, Hugh Farey, because I don't believe that you've read Macron's book. I think you lied about that. How's that? Okay, so I'm not going to return the favor. I think Hugh's read the book, but I'm getting... Okay, so where do I get this? That he's... okay, so on page 138, here's Walter Macron admitting that he's a liar, that he fudges the data to make himself more agreeable to people and stuff like that. He doesn't tell the brutal truth like I do, or the pro-shroud side does. So, for example, he says, at the time, I held out the possibility of an enhanced earlier image to, quote-unquote, ease the blow. So this is him. I knew, however, there was no hope for that idea, because all the very faint images were pigment or medium. What's that? It means Walter McCrone lied because he knew his results were complete BS and would not be accepted by the credible STIRP scientists. So he lied to the STIRP scientists, hoping that it would trick them into believing him. So he basically lied and said, I'm saying it's painted, but please don't hate me, because maybe there was an earlier image of Jesus and it was painted over after that. So he knew at the time he said this in his writings, that was BS. It was impossible. There was, quote unquote, no hope for that idea because all of the very faint image areas were pigment or medium. So McCrone knew he was lying when he held out the possibility to, quote unquote, ease the blow. That's just one of many. And my thing, there's so many letters in his books, and I'm going to include from people that knew him, showing what a disaster of a scientist Walter McCrone was, from Barry Schwartz. You going to call Barry a liar, Hugh? I'd love to see what happens to you if you do that. And from Joe Marino as well. So I'm going to post in the blog those papers going after McCrone to see how that works. But how do I know he's an atheist? Surely I just made that up, as Hugh says. That was simply a quote-unquote lie. Right, Hugh? Don't think so. Page 172. Let's quote McCrone. Faith versus science. One unexpected result of my experience with STIRP has been to convert me from a reasonably faithful Presbyterian to a committed, godless humanist. If they, STIRP, are religious, I want to distance myself from them as far as I can get. What a disgrace this man is. I find humanism an ideal vantage point from which to view and appreciate the Christian world. How belittling, how condescending this man was. It is obvious that I just had as much or more trouble convincing STIRP as I have in convincing the church at True Front War. He goes on from there to compare himself to the innocent little victim Galileo. Oh, Walter McCrone is the hero of his own little story. How pathetic. And he calls himself the adversary of the church on page 173 at the top paragraph here. But here's how he ends, so disparagingly, so belittling of Bible-believing Christians and people who have faith. Civilization and science have progressed significantly during the intervening years. The church has progressed during those years, let us say, less significant. What a disgusting man this guy was. I'm just so sick of the bias. But those are just two quotes proving that come from his book, 2002, Judgment Day for the Shroud of Turin. But according to Hugh, it's simply a lie. There's no evidence that I was right. And, Glover claims his assessment comes from reading his book. I don't believe him. Well, there's the proof, Hugh. Have you read Walter McCrone's book? How about I don't believe you? How does that feel? All right, let's move on to the second of the three objections, is about the fact that I raised that Harry Gov himself admitted, by dating only a single sample, only a biased fool, would believe in the results that represented, the carbon-14 results represented the actual calendar age of the Shroud of Turin. So here's what Hugh says in his own words about only one sample location dated. Quote unquote, Hugh says, quote unquote, Dale Glover begins this section with a prophetic quotation from a letter written by Harry Gov. Notice, so Hugh's confirming, actually, this bullet point's true. There was a letter. Harry Gov did actually say what I said he said in terms of this quote. That wasn't just made up. It wasn't a lie or a distortion of the truth. Interesting. Anyways, but Hugh Farey continues. Glover begins this section with a prophetic quotation from a letter written by Harry Gov, whose attempt to get his own laboratory to be one of those chosen to date the shroud was unsuccessful, to the Pope. Gov predicted that whatever the results, it would cause controversy, and so it did. However, Dale Glover's account of what happened is completely untrue. Completely, 100% untrue. BS, Hugh. Anyways, Hugh continues. The STIRP team did not, quote unquote, set it up that they would take 3 samples from different locations of the shroud, nor is it true that, quote unquote, for some reason it was switched at the last minute to just dating 1 sample location. Nor is it true that Gov accepted the Holy See's decision to date just one small area and went ahead with it anyways. Why? Because I think publicity was more important for this guy, and promoting this brand new carbon-14 method through doing it on the Shroud was more important. Hugh's response to what I said is nonsense. Gov didn't go ahead with it anyways because his lab wasn't chosen to take part at all, and the method was not brand new. So this is something that Hugh Farey says is completely untrue. What rubbish on the part of Hugh Farey. First of all, we have absolute proof. Read Harry Gov's own 1996 book on his role that he played as one of the leaders of the carbon-14 dating of the Shroud and his backstabbing manipulation behind the scenes to get STIRP eliminated. Quite frankly, it was disgusting what this godless atheist did to remove credible, non-biased scientists from conducting their 26 tests that they had planned. So Hugh says it's just not true that STIRP originally set it up to take 3 samples. Let me quote a world's expert here, and actually let me show it to you, just to show Hugh for the liar that he is, apparently. Using his own standards against him, he's a liar. As in 1984, a new STIRP. Who is that STIRP? Oh, STIRP made a proposal, Hugh. STIRP made a proposal for additional scientific study of the Shroud was submitted to the custodians of the Shroud of Turin. The 177-page proposal specified 26 new scientific studies of the Shroud, one of which was radiocarbon testing. Let me just make this even bigger for the people. The issue of contamination was briefly outlined with the statement that such contamination based on STIRP's 1978 examination of the Shroud must be considered as being spatially non-uniform over the entire Shroud. Consequently, the proposal specifically recommended that at least 3. Oh, I was right. Hugh lied. Hugh's a liar. Let's use his own hypocritical double standards against him. Hugh said that this was completely untrue. You're a liar, Hugh. You're a liar. There it is. At least 3 samples be removed from the 3 different carefully pre-analyzed locations on the cloth, and that a sample should also be taken from the Holland backing cloth and tested as a control. But according to Hugh, this is completely untrue. Don't believe you, Hugh. Don't believe you. What else does Hugh lie about in terms of me? First of all, and I should play the clip in context, so just out of fairness, let me play the clip as to what I said, just so you know what was said. Third, getting into a little bit more substantive objections. So here's the first one. It's the fact that they only dated 1 sample location. And here's Harry Gov, the guy who invented the carbon dating, the biased atheist who was kind of one of the leaders of this test for the Shroud. And even he, so, this is the principle of enemy attestation. Even he is saying, quote unquote, the new procedure is bound to produce a dating result that will be questioned in strictly scientific terms by many scientists around the world. So what he's talking about there is originally the STIRP team set it up that they would take 3 samples from different locations on the Shroud and carbon date those. And that helps mitigate against possible contamination areas. If there's a problem in one location on the Shroud, okay, that should be mitigated by dating other areas on 2 other areas on the Shroud as well. But for some reason, it was switched at the last minute to just dating 1 sample location. And this is what Harry Gov is talking about this. He's complaining that, well, this is going to produce a result that will be questioned in strictly scientific terms. Who will be very skeptical of the arbitrarily small statistical basis for our testing. The use of a single sample is ill-advised as it will not generate a reliable date, but will rather give rise to world controversy. We suggest that it would be better not to date the Shroud at all. That's the clip. That's absolutely true. That quote is real from his book. Hugh Farey doesn't deny that quote is real from his book, and that he did say this, according to Hugh Farey, in a letter to the Pope. So I was right? And what is Hugh's skeptical attack? How am I, in God's name, how am I lying to the people at Oakwood about this? Well, according to Hugh, it's because it's not true that Gov accepted the Holy See's decision to date just 1 small area and went ahead with it anyways. Yes, it is. Yes, that is absolutely true. Now, Hugh says, well, his lab wasn't selected. He wasn't doing the data. It was 3 AMS labs. So the original procedure was 7 labs and 3 sample locations. That's what was proposed by Stirp in 1984. And that was changed to only 3 AMS labs. And okay, Hugh is correct that Gov's lab wasn't one of those 3. And from 3 different sample locations down to 1 sample location, which was the problem, right? Now, I said Gov went ahead with it anyway. So Hugh is inserting into that statement, he's straw manning me and pretending I'm saying, well, Gov himself did the carbon-14 dating or something like that. He just went ahead and carbon dated it with his own lab. No, the point is here that Gov was biased because he was the inventor of AMS carbon-14 dating. Doesn't matter what lab did the dating. Totally irrelevant. The fact is, Gov's reputation as a scientist was on the line with the technique, AMS carbon-14 dating, that he invented. And that's why he would continue to be involved behind the scenes. Joe Marino meticulously outlines what this scumbag did behind the scenes. Disgusting what this atheist did, trying to distort science and block science. Went ahead with it anyways. What was I saying? Is that he's saying after they went ahead with the test, he still supported it. Even though he's here being quoted as saying it will not generate a reliable result. Well, once they did it, he's, oh, it's reliable. It's reliable. The Shroud's medieval. He lied to the people. He said, no, it is reliable. He even wrote a book in 1996 justifying his lie to people. Again, maintaining that it was reliable and that the Shroud is a medieval fake. On the basis of what? On the basis of the carbon-14 dating. So here's what I was trying to say to the people at Oakwood. A consistent scientist like Harry Gov wouldn't just biasly say, oh, it won't generate a reliable result. And then, oh, well, they did it. It's reliable. It's reliable. That's a liar, Hugh. And defending him is disgusting. What a real scientist would do, what I would do if I was a scientist, because I'm honest, is I would say it will not generate a reliable result. Oh, they went ahead and dated it anyways? I'm not going to accept this. Nope, this is not, still unreliable. You went ahead and dated it. It's meaningless. We can't prove the Shroud's medieval. I don't believe in this result. That's what an honest scientist would do. You know, if a single sample location invalidates the results back in 1988 before the dating took place, then it invalidates the results in 1989 when they're publishing their 1989 Nature Journal article. That's what a true scientist would be. And it would still invalidate the results in 1996 when you're writing your little book, trying to make money for yourself out of greed, like Harry Gov did, trying to gain fame and publicity for himself. That's what an honest person would do. They would be consistent. They wouldn't say one thing and then contradict themselves right afterwards once they realize, well, there's no changing it. They're going ahead with it anyways against my will. So I know, I'll lie and say, yes, the results are good. That's what Harry Gov did. That's what I meant when I said he went ahead with it anyways. Is that a lie? No, it's not. You don't dare say I'm a liar about that or that it's completely untrue. It is completely true, Hugh. Let's move on to Hugh Farey's third and final point in his email. And on this front, because I'm so honest, I actually, out of friendship toward Hugh, again, this is in the private email, so I won't reveal everything, but I'll just say out of friendship towards Hugh, I even half conceded that he may have a point on this front. And I opened up to him about a struggle that I had about, my selection of what I revealed or not and that sort of thing. And I even admitted that maybe he has a point that I unintentionally lied by omission on this front. So what is this about? Let's get into this part next. Okay, so the third and final specific attack against my integrity that Hugh wanted me to respond to in the private emails, but that again, we're just going to look at what he says in the public blog, is about the blue quad mosaic image. So I just want to play the clip of what was said in full context for once I'm remembering to do it in order here. So what did I say to Oakwood about the blue quad mosaic image? Let's see. Another thing that's really helpful that illustrates the difference is the blue quad mosaic image. So this is a scientific instrument that allows you to see the different chemical composition of the cloth. And here's a helpful visual. So you can see, here's the rest of the shroud cloth. It comes off in the blue quad mosaic as an orange or yellowish color. Here's the area they carbon dated. For whatever reason, it's coming off as dark blue in color. There's clearly a difference that this scientific instrument, the UV fluorescence studies, is picking up here, and that reflects some kind of chemical difference in the composition. So, yeah, this is kind of the evidence that suggests there's something going on with the patch they chose. They chose the wrong location to date. Is that making sense to everybody? That's it. That's literally what I said, which was absolutely true. Let's see what Hugh says that I'm apparently lying about here. The blue quad mosaic images distinguish areas of different chemicals by color. This is untrue. Glover's quote unquote helpful visual is deliberately deceptive. So I'm being deliberately deceptive. I'm deliberately lying to people right there. That's according to Hugh. And his commentary is even more so. By showing only one small part of the image, he can point to an area and say, here's the rest of the shroud cloth. It comes off in the blue quad mosaic image's orange or yellowish color. Glover knows very well that actually a third of the shroud comes off as bright blue, but by deliberately hiding that part, he can pretend some kind of uniformity to the main part of the shroud, which is different from the radiocarbon corner. Here's the area of the carbon dating. He goes on, outlining with his cursor an area which is not the carbon dating area at all. Then he confuses the color separation technique of the mosaics with UV fluorescence. So that's just nitpicking nonsense. I just misspoke for half a second. I was like, I called the blue quad mosaic coloring images. I referred to it as UV fluorescence because I saw that there. That was just a brain slip kind of thing. But he's manipulating and lying to people in his blog by saying that I don't know the difference and that I deliberately got that wrong or something. Pathetic, Hugh, pathetic. That's what a servant of Satan does. Do better. You claim to be a Roman Catholic and serve Christ. Do better. Now he goes on. Then he and spectacularly ignores a bright pale blue triangle, which is exactly the same material as the area he identified as dark blue, but which according to his commentary ought to be completely different. So I didn't ignore the bright blue triangle. Let's bring that up. Lying Hugh Farey is talking about. He's talking about the rays sample, which I talk about directly afterwards, right? This is a piece of the cloth that was removed. That's why it's colored differently, because it was removed in 1973. This is empty space. On a blue quad mosaic, this is what the empty space looks like. So I didn't deliberately ignore that. It is different. That's why it's different from the dark blue and the orange of the cloth. So these two things are just lies on the part of you, deliberately manipulating data. And this is why everyone calls him a wolf in sheep's clothing on the Shroud Science group. And they want to kick him out, including the leaders like Giulio Fonte, want him to be kicked out because of his deliberate straw men and misinterpretations like this. Despite this, I always defend him because I understand how bias can subconsciously distort you. I do believe that Hugh, despite how I'm angry with him here, I've always believed that he is, in general, a good faith actor. Yes, his bias makes him make these little stupid nitpicks that are white lies, I guess, for lack of a better word. But I've always defended Hugh's general integrity as trying to make a good faith effort to present the truth. I'm hoping that's still true. I don't know what to make of it after what, the deliberate lies. Even after I worked with him in private and explained myself, and he's deliberately lying. He says, I would never call you a liar. I don't believe I'm warranted in calling you a liar. And then he calls me a liar, someone who deliberately deceives in the blog itself. And he won't do what a good friend should do in making that disclaimer. If you didn't intend to call me a liar, then put that in a disclaimer. Leave the blog as is. Let people decide for themselves based on the fact and after looking at both sides. Unlike Hugh, I trust my audience. I trust the people at Oakwood Wesleyan Church. They're not idiots. They're smart. They're intelligent people. I trust them to go beyond what I present. And they did. They're asking for sources and ways to go beyond and to research and stuff like that. And I provide that to them with my blogs and links. And even to this day, they can always reach out to me anytime. And I would help them with presenting the papers for them to decide for themselves. I trust my audience. Hugh doesn't. And that's why Hugh has to make these big deals out of nothing. That said, what about Hugh's, just so I'm not strawmanning Hugh, what about his main point? This image is showing only part of the cloth. You can't see the full cloth. And here is where Hugh is finally making a good, true substantive point. Because here's what the blue quad mosaic image looks, here's what it looks like in full. So scrolling down. So here's the blue spot where they carbon dated, right? And the rest of the cloth is orange or yellowish, just as I said. But whoops, the top of the cloth is also colored blue, right? So, and Hugh is correct that I deliberately didn't show this full image. So that part's true. I deliberately did not show this. Does that imply that I'm deliberately lying or that what I said was untrue? No. In the first place, let me explain my thinking and the circumstances as to why I didn't show it. Okay, so number one, I was given direct orders from my boss, from Reverend Sully, to make things as simple as possible. To take out technical nuances and that sort of thing, and kind of present a case for people that are totally new to the Shroud. In some cases, I did my best to do that. First of all, it requires certain selection of data points, okay? So Hugh doesn't complain at all about my first 3 shows, but there are things where I even told the Oakwood thing, Wesleyan Church, that I am selecting data, right? So, for example, here's a good example. When I presented a Pro-Shroud evidence like the Hungarian Prey Codex, I didn't present, okay, well, what are the Shroud skeptics' responses to that, right? And I did that for time's sake and for simplicity. That doesn't make me a liar. That just makes me, I'm trying to present the data in a simplistic way that will fit the time limits. Now, in that show, and I can show the clip if I need to, I did actually raise what 3 of the Shroud skeptics' objections are, the main Shroud skeptical objections are, because someone asked me, Reverend Sully asked me, and what do the Shroud skeptics say about this? And I provided those critiques for them at that time. But it's not like, oh, well, if Reverend Sully never asked you and you never raised it, it's not like, oh, well, that means I was lying if I didn't raise that. No, when you're presenting material, there's so much material on the Shroud, you have to select what you're going to present and take a thought as to how you're going to present. Now, on this front, I didn't show this half of the image because this part of the image being colored blue is totally irrelevant to this square being blue. It's not provably relevant to why this square being blue in terms of it being an invisible reweave patch. So it just shows that there's some kind of difference between this part of the cloth and this top part of the cloth. That's true. There's some kind of difference between this part of the cloth that they carbon dated and the rest of the cloth that's orange and yellowish, right? Now, could there be multiple things that would cause the Shroud cloth to come out blue? Yes, we haven't proven that the blueness of this spot is not due to it being an invisible reweave patch. No, it could be there's an invisible reweave patch here, and that's why this part's blue. And there's a different reason as to why it's blue up here. I don't know. Maybe someone had some nacho Doritos and spilled it on the Shroud at that point, and now it comes out blue. There could be multiple different reasons for why it would show up this different color. So this is still a valid piece of evidence. The fact that there's this difference right in the position as a square, right? This looks random distribution. It's not a perfect cut or square, whereas this is a perfect rectangle or square, just like an invisible reweave patch would be. So this is, in fact, live evidence that supports an invisible reweave hypothesis. That's why I didn't want to confuse matters by getting into this and showing, well, yes, it's blue up here, but that has nothing to do with this. And this would totally confuse the audience in a way that's irrelevant to the main point that's being offered in terms of the carbon-14 dating, or at the very least is not provably relevant, right? If you can prove, Hugh Farey, can you prove that this area of the cloth is blue and this area of the cloth is blue for the exact same reason, having nothing to do with an invisible reweave? Can you prove that, either on a balance of probabilities or otherwise? No, you can't. We just have this image showing there's a difference. And one of the possible explanations for why it's different here is because there's an invisible reweave. Now, that said, being a true Bible-believing Christian who's not just interested in scoring points, I admitted to Hugh that you may have a point on this front, because I did struggle with this and I did deliberately choose to leave this out because I felt it would be too confusing. And I felt it wasn't something that was provably relevant to the main point about the carbon dating versus the invisible reweave patch. So I didn't believe that I was lying by omission when I left this out. Now, I can respect the other side because I'm not totally comfortable with that choice on my side. I wasn't, and I remember even talking to a couple of Pro-Shroud experts, but they were complaining about Hugh, his lies by omission with his selection of data versus leaving out other points and stuff like that. And I was defending Hugh, ironically enough, saying, well, I can understand, sometimes for simplicity's sake, you need to select data so long as it's not actually, provably a false, involving a falsehood, like something that you would know if you considered the overall evidence, you would know what you're saying is false. The fact that this top half is blue in no way falsifies anything that I said to Oakwood Wesleyan Church about this being an invisible reweave. It doesn't. I don't know why this is blue. It could be for the same reason that this square is blue, or it could be for a totally different reason. So I made a choice there. But if I even said to Hugh, I said, if you want to accuse me of lying by omission on this front, I don't think you're right. I've explained my reasons as best I could. I didn't believe I was lying by omission, but maybe I did. Maybe I made a mistake on this front. And I even asked Hugh, what would you have said what would you have done given these circumstances, right? You've got strict rules not to provide too much nuance and to make things simple for people who are totally new to complex arguments about the shroud. What would you have said that would have been better? So I was open to allowing Hugh to say, yeah, maybe unintentionally or unwittingly, I was a liar by omission, by leaving this part out. And I was asking Hugh for help, like what should I do differently? And as far as I'm concerned, Hugh spit in my face. Again, I won't reveal anything private, but from my perspective, Hugh spit in my face after that. So yeah, that's the blue quad mosaic. That's it in terms of what Hugh had to offer in terms of the three main points that he gave. Calling me a liar. Obviously, in his blog, he gives a whole bunch more. So I will post that on my blog for anyone who wants to research. I will just say, remember, don't just believe Hugh, because under Hugh's standards, Hugh's a dang liar, according to his own standards. He's dishonest. He's manipulative with the data and the selection he does. And he's a hypocrite, because the things that he accuses me of lying of, which aren't actually lies, he actually does on purpose to lie and stuff like that, to present a one-sided version of the truth to support the side he wants to hear. And that's disappointing to me. But nonetheless, overall, I would still defend Hugh's intentions. I don't think he's nefarious. I don't believe he's malicious. I'm open to it now for the first time. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I'm gullible and naive and wanting, as a true Bible-believing Christian, I want to see the best in people. And maybe Hugh's pulled the wool over my eyes. I'm hoping I'm wrong. And Hugh, here's my extension of the hands of friendship. If you truly want to remain friends and truly serve Christ, not Satan, prove to me that you don't worship Satan, right? You dedicate your entire life to destroying people's faiths by attacking the shroud. That's your role in life. You don't engage in evangelism. Do you ever present the gospel to people? When do you ever present the positive case? It was me out of defense for you. I finally gave you an opportunity to debate something positive, arguing for the resurrection historically, in your debate with Ben Watkins, for example, just to prove that, look, your entire life isn't devoted to being a wolf in sheep's clothing, destroying people's faith through destroying their belief in the shroud. People believe you're a fake Christian because of that. And I've defended you on that front out of friendship, against other people who I'm friends with. So I deserve a bit of charity. And in the offering of friendship, my hands are open to continuing our friendship. All I ask is just put a disclaimer on your blog. You yourself say that you never intended and don't believe you're warranted in calling me a liar, dishonest, or a fake Christian. If that's true, then put a disclaimer at the top of your blog, and do the same for any and all future blogs you write about me. I don't care if you stick to the substance and say I'm wrong or this or that. I didn't even care. I didn't even say a peep when you're kind of insulting me and saying I'm an ignorant and stupid and all this stuff. I kind of just laugh that off because, whatever. That's just bombastic language. But when you call me a deliberate deceiver and a liar, that's something that I take seriously, because my character trait on my character and on that front is important. How are Shroud skeptics who watch my channel, or even Christians who are coming to learn about the Shroud, how are they going to trust me? Maybe I'm deliberately trying to mislead them and stuff, when for a fact that's not true. Above everyone else, I'm the only podcast that brings on experts to debate so people can hear both sides, not just one side or the other. I post in my blog. You write in one of your blogs where you're cutting me up. I post, unlike you, I don't just have a bibliography. I actually post the papers themselves so people can freely click on them and have ready access to both sides. That includes your blog. I market your blogs in my own blog so that people can have ready access to them. You're just a tip here. Your blog search functions are horrible. You need to have like a search bar or some way that people can find your blogs, because once they're no longer on the front page, it's just impossible to find anything that people are looking for. So just a tip there, have a better search function. But anyways, I help you out by linking to relevant blogs in my own blog so people can have ready access to that. And I include the web link and stuff like that so people can go directly to your blog to support you. I present both sides, and I trust my audience to be smart enough to not just believe everything I say or to believe everything you say or anyone says on my show. They take it, they see both sides, they see point, counterpoint, rebuttals, and then I provide links to sources and the sources themselves so they can go beyond the shows and research for themselves in depth. My gosh, calling me, I'm not an honest authenticist. You end your blog, I'll finish this way. Maybe one day I'll write a post called The Honest Authenticist, but I may have to invent him first. You don't have to invent him. So many of us, as you yourself admit, Joe Marino, me, Bob Rucker, Teddy, Julio Fonte. Look, I don't know any authenticist who's dishonest at all. The only person I know as an expert who's provably dishonest is you, Hugh. But again, in a minor way. I think you tell white lies unwittingly in your selection of data or the way you manipulate and present obscure points. And you take advantage of the fact that most people don't have the time or luxury to respond to all the hundreds of points you give. You take advantage of that. But when they do, over and over again, you're slaughtered in terms of the points. You're shown to be wrong or manipulating, or just look at Teddy, look at the comments in Hugh's blogs, and Hugh just gets destroyed when he comes up against a knowledgeable expert who actually does the work and says, okay, fine, I'm going to respond to these points that Hugh raises. he's left flailing around for the most part. He's shown to be wrong over and over again. And some people would say, well, that's because he's deliberately lying to present a false picture. I don't want to believe that about you, Hugh. If I apply your standard that you do against me, then yeah, you're a proven liar. There's no doubt about it. But if we're going to be charitable as Christians and friends towards each other, then I try to give you the benefit of the doubt and try to ascribe it to bias or something like that. And so I demand you do the same for me and for others. So yeah, Hugh, that's can we repair this friendship? Well, it all depends. Will you write that disclaimer at the top of your blog? If you don't intend to write that somebody's dishonest or a liar, or you don't intend to do something, but your blog actually explicitly and implicitly says that they are this or that, and then they confront you about it and they say, just write a disclaimer. You don't even have to change the blog. Just write a disclaimer saying that this is not your intention and you don't believe it's true. Then you do it. You don't ghost that person and just ignore them and keep your blog up and the damage as is. And I ask that going forward, you're more mindful of that. If you don't want to say that somebody is a liar or manipulating data or whatever you want to say in your blog, however you want to phrase it, just put that little disclaimer up that you don't intend to do this, and then it'll be fine. So that's the way forward, I think, Hugh. I look forward to checking out your blog, and I hope to see that disclaimer up there. You know, I want to see you as a friend. I've enjoyed and benefited from our friendship, even though you're a Shroud skeptic. So the ball's in your court.